It's time to talk music, audio gear, and anything else that crosses our minds. I'm Mark.
And I'm Peter.
And welcome to the Hurton Audio Podcast. So there's been a lot of new albums coming out lately with Kings of Leon and Dua Lipa and lots of announcements and teasing from bands like Imagine Dragons. But I think one album we've just got through the post is Kings of Leon, isn't it, Pierre?
Yeah, and it's been produced by Kid Harpoon, which I was reading about in Sound on what he was doing with Harry Styles. And his approach is really, really interesting because he's like, yeah, everybody get like off the computers and get on like your instruments. And you can sort of, I feel like it's quite clear on the album, like you can hear that because it is a very, very like lively sounding album. You know, I would be surprised if there was many parts on the entire album that was sequenced at all. And again, in the Sound on Sound article, his full thing is if you're going to sequence something, get an MPC out, which I just think is really funny. Like it's a funny when the technology is so available, it's funny to limit yourself in that manner because the one thing that your average DAW does is it makes stuff like sequencing and programming super, super easy. But I think it comes back to that approach of listening to something and not looking at something, which is something that I keep like hearing about here and there.
I suppose the thing is, if you program, say, like a little keyboard part in an MPC and the rest of the band's playing in the room, you're not able to lock it in to the sort of like the inbuilt session of the MPC workflow like you would a DAW. You're having to just do it separately.
And I think track it almost like a keyboard track is what you're saying. Like,
yeah, because you're not that like the charm of a lot of sequences is that you have the entire song's arrangement with the thing you're doing, and that if you go, oh, what's going on the verse or whatever, it moves with it. So if you've got an entire band live in the room and you're just messing about an MPC by itself, and you've just got that going into the PA speakers, or in say Kid Harpoon's case, I suppose he'll have that routed into his desk with all the band.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
It is more like playing a keyboard.
Yeah.
Because there's not really, like, you're just playing one thing on the MPC, aren't you? You know, even if you lay multiple things up on the MPC and then create a loop, it's still more like holding a pad on a keyboard because it's not matched to anything, is it?
Yeah, I suppose it isn't really. And I think it's a really nice, like, sounding album. It reminds me a bit of I'm not going to remember the one with Radioactive on. Can't remember the album name now. It's not
Come Around Sundown.
Come Around Sundown. Yeah. It reminds me of that. Like it reminds me of songs like The End.
Yeah, it does. Actually,
that's what's sort of coming through for me, and it's just a nice album. You know, I've listened to it all out of sequence. I would like to put the album on and listen to it as intended.
Yeah,
when we get the CD out at some point, but it's nice to see that come out. Dua Lipa's album, I've done the same thing with, haven't listened to it all the way through, but I've listened to it all out of sequence pretty much. And that one was really interesting because she's sort of like, where a lot of albums, and this is what we were saying yesterday, is that a lot of people will get a lot of featurings, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with featurings. But what they've done on the Dua Lipa album, she's sort of like put a band together with Kevin Parker from Tame Impala and a couple of other people, like songwriters and stuff, who all like perform. So it's like credited like as the album is performed and written by a band essentially, but Dua Lipa's just like singing and providing like the vision for it. And I think that's a really, really neat way of doing it because it reminds me sort of like Prince and the Revolution.
Yeah.
Where Prince is like, right, you know, I've done all this like mainly by myself. Let's get some other people in and let's do something to let me bounce off some other people, which, you know, is something that when it's done, it's not really brought to the forefront as much. But I just think that it's cool that she said, like, it's a band.
Yeah,
no, it isn't really.
We was talking about how, like, bands like, say, Kings of Leon, obvious example, and The Main as well. The reason we bring up these bands is because it's the same for band members, same five in the case of The Main. But, like, with Kings of Leon, the strength of Kings of Leon is it's the same four guys who's been doing it the full time. So in theory, they all have an equal stake in the music they're making. Even if one of them is technically leading or in charge, or however, I don't know, in Kings of Leon's case, how even it is. But the thing is that they all have their say, whereas I think the danger you have with a lot of solo artists and even bands where they start losing members left and right is it ends up being a one person band, and then they have nobody to push and pull with. And you have a lot of cases when you read like some of these band stories where you have one member of the band, it could be the bassist or the drummer, just pushing a song or pushing a sound for an entire album.
Yeah.
Everybody else is like, oh, fine, we'll do it. And then that's like one of the things. It's a bit
like Another One Bites the Dust.
It's a bit like John Deacon, you know. Obviously, John Deacon does a lot more than play bass in Queen, but that you only know that if you read about Queen or you know about Queen.
Yeah, because you don't think anything of it. If you don't look at the credits of who wrote which song, because John Deacon doesn't sing his songs, unlike Brian May and Roger Taylor, he like pens a lot of Queen's like biggest hits, and you know a lot of them are in styles that are not really what Queen should have been playing. Like, you know, Brian and Roger always say, like, whenever they're interviewed, they wanted to do the hard rock stuff. And then you think about songs like You're My Best Friend, which is like a soul sort of song, isn't it? And then you've got like Another One Bites the Dust, which is a disco song, which everybody is on record saying they didn't want to do, really, in Queen.
But, you know, the thing is with a sort of like band consensus is that they have that push and pull where they ultimately land slightly off track to what anybody wants to do, which... like when you're thinking about how to write an idea, it doesn't really make sense in a way to throw yourself off the scent of what you're doing because, you know, everybody's compromising. But at the same time, compromise can sometimes be one of the best things with some of the band situations because, you know, it also stops any single member from the band from either they all get a moment or none of them are allowed to be overzealous with what they're doing and, you know, too egotistical. So you find that a lot of the best guitar players have bands that sort of calm them down so they're not just like shredding the entire song because it's better to have a 20-second moment in the song that's really cool than to just go off on one the entire time or have an overcomplicated riff that doesn't sit well in like a live context.
Every single Van Halen song was Eruption, you'd be like, it's cool.
Yeah,
but we need some songs. You know, there's a reason why Jump is Van Halen's biggest song, and it's because it's fun and catchy. And there's a massive solo section, guitar and keyboard solo section, so everybody gets the fill. But it's, I think, contextually to have something that like extreme in a pop arrangement. You know, because it's a rock. I'll say it's a rock. Yeah, it is a rock song, but it's very like. Yeah, it's apples and oranges when it comes to what Jump is. You know, it's not your average Van Halen song. It's very unusual for Van Halen, I think, that song. But you know, in context, it's a lot more exciting to have a big guitar moment like that in like a fairly digestible pop sort of arrangement.
And it's just nice when you see bands that stay together, and that's what's really refreshing with Kings of Leon. Because Kings of Leon have been on a real, like, it's almost hard to remember the amount of albums they put out because they consistently put albums out. You know, like, from the space of, like, when they did Fly By Night. It's not Fly By Night,
that's Rush. It's Only By the Night.
Only By the Night. I knew I'm
getting it right.
I was in the right place. But they've really put out a really good string of albums. Like, I suppose we've sort of listened to every single one of them. Walls being a particular favourite for me.
I like Walls a lot.
But they're all really good in different ways. And it's just really nice. Like, because a lot of bands, like Kings of Leon, they could just sort of drop off the face of the earth and not do anything for 5 or 6 years and, you know, go, we're going to do a song.
If you look, Walls came out in like 2017, and then If You Could See Yourself, I'm sure I'm getting that wrong, is like 2021 or 2. So there is like that's a big gap, that one. But that is the biggest gap, I think, in their catalogue.
I'm going to look now.
It's worth looking sometimes. We was also laughing like how, you know, Queen in their late 80s, early 90s, were an old band. A really old band. Because, you know, contextually, popular music hadn't existed that long. And if you was on the go 10, 20 years, yeah, you was like a legacy band, essentially. And we were saying that Kings of Leon has actually been going longer than Queen did. Like, Queen really were only going about 20 years before, unfortunately, Freddie passed away. And Kings of Leon have been going 20 years. And it's funny because in your head, I'm like, well, Kings of Leon aren't older than Queen. And I'm like, but they are, though. If you put them out at the exact same time, Kings of Leon would now have been going longer. And it's just a very, very hard thing to wrap your head around. I think it's because of the fact that every decade music gets, like, the history of music gets longer, and it sounds really obvious, but contextually, like, in the year 2000, you had, like, all these nice, neat little decades. So now it keeps getting strung out more and more and more. I think it's just hard to believe, like, Daft Punk stuff's 20 years old, you know.
I think
it's classic Old Man Yells at Cloud, but it's just it's hard to think of that as being retro music.
I think the problem you have is that people are still infatuated with 80s music and then disco and house. Obviously, is I suppose
predominantly 90s. I would say,
yeah, 90s. So we're sort of not moving on, and unless we have, which we kind of are getting with one or two tracks, unless we have like a very early renaissance of like 2010s music. 2010s music actually has something to say. No, that is definitively that period of time.
Yes.
Which is what a lot of the decades have, but then some of them don't have it as strong as others. The thing is with the 2010s is that the EDM pop music was very dated now.
But you can't pretend that like Skrillex is coming from somewhere else. It is. No. It's Skrillex. It's like dubstep. Dubstep is dubstep. It's not like some of the rock genres where, or say like Silk Sonic, for example, Bruno Mars, Anderson .Paak. It's not like you can say it's a new like funk album, but you know, you can see all these references of where it's coming from. And that's not to say like a lot of these big 2010s dubstep songs didn't pull from anywhere else. But I mean, when you listen to a song like Bangarang, it's hard to say like, well, that sounds like this song by Emerson, Lake and Park.
So regarding Kings of Leon's discography, obviously they've got the first three albums which come out in 2003, 2004 and 2007, right? So from the point of like international popularity, we'll say, with Only by the Night, in 2008, they got 2008, Come Around Sundown is 2010, Mechanical Bull 2013, Walls 2016, When You See Yourself 2021, and Can We Please Have Fun is 2024. So you're right, there is actually a 5-year gap between.
Yeah, because Walls came out technically a year earlier than I thought it did. So yeah, there's a big old gap there.
When I look at it, and I think six since 2008, it doesn't seem as much.
How many albums is that?
They've got 9 altogether.
Oh. How many albums did Queen have when they got to the late 80s? I feel like they had like maybe one or two more. It's just because that like 5-year gap between Walls and If You See Yourself is very like the exact same spot of where the Miracles 5-year gap is in Queen's catalogue.
Yeah,
it's just hard not to draw. It's a bizarre line that I'm trying to draw, but it's like hard not to compare that.
Yeah, because you have. On the early side, you have like a year gap between some of the albums, and then you start getting big, drawn-out gaps. But they did say there was Burnt Out after Walls, didn't they?
I think they did, yeah.
And then they probably went in 2019 to start working on something, and then by the time they had something good, it would have been COVID, so that'll have delayed it probably.
Yeah.
Which is going to be interesting when you look at like the discography for a lot of bands. Like in 2013, there's just this massive hole like at the start of the 2020s where COVID sort of knocked some people to do more, but some people just went, I'm done.
Some people,
Kings of Leon obviously didn't need to keep their momentum up, so they'll have just gone, I'm over it, you know.
Yeah, we'll push it back or whatever. We'll do it when we're ready.
Or I suppose they might have been doing some kind of hiatus from Walls, saying let's not do anything, and then them not being able to do anything in 2020 pushed them to make together. When You See Yourself, which come out in 2021. So it's interesting to think about.
There was a lot of bands that weren't interested in making an album that made an album in 2020.
Yeah, bands like Journey come to mind, where because they couldn't do anything else, it sort of forced their hand. So
I imagine that's where a lot of Motley Crue's new album's going to come from.
They said it's not going to be an album with Motley Crue.
What are they doing? I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to get angry at Motley
They said
Crue.
They're going to do some singles and then see where they go from there.
No.
Vince Neil, who also face planted recently on stage.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he did. But I haven't listened to Dogs of War yet. And in all fairness,
No,
I should listen to it to see how it sounds. Because a lot of people have some very interesting things to say about it. But yeah, Motley Crue's always going to be an enigma when it comes to music releases.
I don't understand. It's been proven now. You look at people like Taylor Swift, anybody popular, they just drop like a 30-song album. It's been proven that singles work if you put one out every month. Singles do not work if you put one out in 10 years.
I find it very interesting with albums because, like say, in theory, Kings of Leon, they should stretch out the singles for an extra couple of months, and by the time the 10th singles come out, they should have the next single off the next album. That is great from a marketing point of view and all that. But I also think that that's just not how consumers want music.
Also, it sounds really silly, but for a lot of artists, that the last 3 or 4 singles would probably sound mega dated.
Yeah.
Because, or you make an album in a season, it's a summer album. Let's take Dua Lipa's album, for example. And I think it's fair to say that she will be dropping singles like in December from this album, like maybe with featurings or reworks on it all. Because you think about Future Nostalgia, that was rolling out forever. They never stopped releasing
the thing is with singles is it doesn't matter if the song's already come out. If you make a music video and re-release it as like a single vinyl, it's a single, you know.
I think it's difficult because unless you have an album where you've got different seasonal sounding songs, it can be difficult for that album. You make a summer album. If you put a song out at Christmas, it's going to be a bit weird.
Dua Lipa can't have Maria come out in England as a UK single. Do you know what I mean? Because Maria is far too summery and European to be blasted on radio in the UK, especially in December.
In December. Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Like,
and unless they swing like an escapism route. I always think of that Robbie Williams Christmas song, where it's like flamenco.
Oh yeah,
and that one did really well, probably because people were like, we'll take the opposite end of it, where actually we're so desperate to get out of this winter, we will listen to this summery song. So. It's what I mean is it's a bit like Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter. It's like there's a right time to like release a song sometimes, especially when you're talking about these insanely meticulously planned major label releases where there'll be somebody with a spreadsheet like the Always Sunny Philadelphia one, having every song on and having months that could be released at, and then the domino plan and stuff like that to say, if this one does good, we'll do this one at this time, and if this one doesn't do good, then we'll do this one. And I reckon that it gets quite complicated, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, it depends, because like some songs are more set in like summer or winter than others, and then some songs, like say I'm listening to Split Screen by Kings of Leon, I'm like, I can imagine this at night on a beach, and I can imagine this like in a cozy log cabin, do you know what I mean, in winter. It sort of goes either way because of the way the instrumentation and the melodics play out. Do you know what I mean? It's not really screaming. Does it maybe hint at winter slightly more? It's almost like you could all, depending on how you spin the narrative. Now, if the song's called Split Screen and you had them all playing some video games before Christmas, when they all go around to somebody's house, do you know what I mean?
Are you submitting this to Kings of Leon for
No,
video
I'm just saying, then that can place it. It depends on how you interpret it, is what I'm saying. It depends what you take away from it.
The split screen that they're referring to?
I don't know.
It can't be couch co-op, because that'd be ridiculous.
It just seems,
I'm trying to think about what
screen.
A split screen is when it's not in a game.
Well, it's not really anything, is it? Split screen.
There'll be like a, I don't know if it's like a changing room like splitter,
I suppose,
or if it's like a do you know what I mean? Like a blind situation.
I did think it was very odd when I saw them having a single called Split Screen.
It's gamer brain though, isn't it? Because it's like when I saw the single Fortnite by Taylor Swift and Post Malone, I was convinced it was going to be about the game. I don't know why. It shouldn't have been, but I was convinced.
Worried that it was going to be some kind of clever way for them to do a Fortnite as a period of time and reference the game at the same time, which obviously you say Taylor Swift wouldn't do that, but she is referencing GTA on this album anyway, so it's not out of her jurisdiction per se. But like I say, it depends what you take from it. I mean, the thing is with music is that you can love a song and not even understand the words in it.
Yeah.
Because
And that's I think that's as important, a bit like they were saying about the idea of songs just sounding good and sounding catchy.
this goes into the Def Leppard phonetics argument, where it's hubcap, diamond star, halo that they really like by T-Rex. So, you know, it doesn't mean anything, but it depends on what you interpret from it. But all I know is Split Screen is definitely one of my favourite songs from this Kings of Leon album at the moment, because it just seems to have a rolling quality that is melodically very pleasing to me.
I like it when some of the bands stretch out a bit. I think the only complaint that Kings of Leon, briefly when I was trying to look at if there was anything to read about it, the only thing that they're getting from some of the fans is some of the fans are like, we want an album of upbeat songs. We want an album of a blood of like basically Sex on Fire bangers.
They want like you say, radioactive, Sex on Fire. They want songs
all
like
tempo basically. Because
Waste a Moment was pretty upbeat. I think that's why it did so well.
I don't want to compare Kings of Leon to Arctic Monkeys, but
You kind of already have said everything that they need to say.
There's a thing happening with both of them where some of the Kings of Leon sounds, I'm thinking about some of the Kings of Leon songs, thinking about Muchacho off Walls.
I love Muchacho.
Very lounge. Very lounge
70s
music.
lounge, yeah.
And all the newer Kings of Leon albums, like in the past 5 years or so, 5 to 8 years or so. I'm trying to get Walls in there.
Are you saying from, say, Mechanical Bull? Is that when you're,
from Mechanical Bull.
Is that when
They've
you're
got
pulling from?
A bit lounge. I mean, they're a bit lounge. And I like that, though. I like ballads. I like slower songs. I think there's space for them. But you got Mustang on this album. What more can you ask for? Mustang's a cracking track.
I think a lot of these albums, what the Sound Kings of Leon's going for, if you interpret this how you will, Peter, is it's almost like they've gone for the sort of thing where you imagine the lead actor in a movie in his 70s house, he puts a vinyl on screen, puts the needle down, and it's playing something like this in the movie as diegetic music.
This album to me is quintessentially American, just like the Arctic Monkeys. Nah, I shouldn't make fun. I do like the Arctic Monkeys. I want to make that clear. But lounge music is it probably was more prevalent in Britain, but it's definitely. It's not something that is as common to hear. But in America, they seem to have these. They have these like little bits of history they can dip into, and they just seem to get away with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's weird with America in the way they seem to have. I suppose it is a very big place, so they have lots more pockets to pull from.
Yeah.
Like when you're talking about Americana, Americana is almost like talking about the entire music history of Europe, because America is so big when you overlay it.
Yeah,
On top of like Europe, you get a good, not necessarily all of Europe, but you get a good half of Europe.
I think as well, America really, when you think of people like Elvis and that, it's where the business side started. So I think it does have it has more say over music as an industry, not as a history.
I think the other thing is that, like, even though music predominantly, like when you talk about business and that, actually, yeah, I suppose you're right, though, because I was going to say the Beatles, but then I was like, well, Elvis was before the Beatles, wasn't he?
And
So,
the Beatles' full goal was to break America.
yeah, so no, you're right.
And from the get-go, everybody's goal has been to break America. They still try to do it now. Trying to get Capaldi to break America, which I think he sort of did, didn't he? He succeeded there.
Don't you think it's kind of pointless, though, to break America at this stage?
I think it's just something people do because the Beatles did it. And
when they get bored of being good in their hometown, they
it's
go,
like
"No,
the next. It's the next. It's like we've done this arena, so now we need to do a stadium, and we've done this stadium, so now we need to do the next biggest thing. That's the goal.
Yeah, what's this? Nothing to do. This is the next single, isn't it?
Is it? Is this?
Oh
one?
no, sorry. Nowhere to runs the next.
Yeah, you see,
single.
I haven't actually got into all the songs on this album fully. But,
I was just
I've been
taken
enjoying
aback
it.
by the rip-roaring riff that seems so energetic. See, Kings of Leon are a very energetic band, but I think, like you say, Peter, they're almost getting placed in this lounge music box in places.
I think the fans want them to just kick and scream, and they're like, we're going to do some writing. We're going to make some art here. Do you know what I mean? That's what that's what I think. And it's a bit like with Arctic Monkeys. People want them to just go, they want them to do AM again, and they want the songs to be tight and catchy, and they don't really want Arctic Monkeys to sprawl out as much. And I know a lot of Arctic Monkeys fans like the new stuff, but a lot of them, I think they say they like it a bit more than maybe they actually do.
It's almost like they just want both Kings of Leon and Arctic Monkeys to be wild, because like Nothing to Do is like ticking all those early Kings of Leon boxes where the vocals, Caleb's vocals, are a bit wild and screechy, and the music sort of just, it's been played at you, it feels almost. That's how some of the early Kings of Leon songs sound to me. Like say, Fake Fan over here likes them after the third album. Sorry, likes them on the fourth album and through to now. I'm not massive on the first 2 or 3 albums. Songs like Molly's Chamber are fine, but they're not what I reach for when I'm listening to Kings of Leon. I very much like Kings of Leon after Only by the Night, but Only by the Night has grown on me over the years.
Cracking songs,
like
you
Closer
can't argue with that album
and stuff. It's a very good album.
Yeah.
But at the time when the album came out, I sort of didn't know what to think of it.
That album had a very unique sound. I suppose Kings of Leon still do now. They don't. You want to say that they sound like other people, but
the only
don't.
problem with a song like Nothing to Do is if the full album sounded like that, it wouldn't be, in my opinion, it wouldn't be memorable. Because this sounds too generically, not punk, but it sounds too generically like surf, punk, whatever, just like a bunch of people wailing on guitars and screaming at you.
I was going to say, it's the having different moments in an album. I think it's like one of those things. It's like if The Weeknd dropped an album of 10 songs that were all Blinding Lights, but slightly different. It's cool for a second.
And this is kind of how some of the albums that are trying to be like greatest hits, all singles, sort of flop as well, because they start to not become memorable. It's like if I say, name the 7 songs on Hysteria that are singles, they start to blur together, because some of the songs, they sound sonically so similar that you start to lose the thread of, well, which songs are singles and which songs are which songs break it up. It's really hard, because if you're too wild, like if like albums are too varied, people say, I don't know what this album's supposed to be. I don't know, like critics and stuff.
It can go either way.
They
you can go
I don't
too far.
get it. I don't know. There's no variation, but there's too much variation. And then if you do an album like, say, AC/DC, get very guilty of sort of being lumbered with, and Nickelback to an extent have had this criticism as well.
They have.
All the songs sound the same.
Which I always think is a bit unfair.
It's harsh on Nickelback specifically, because Nickelback have a song where have an album where half the songs are fast rock songs and half the songs are ballads.
So you could say every other song sounds the same.
Yeah.
But I think to say every song sounds the same is tight.
It's like listening to something in your mouth and going, it sounds exactly the same as I'd Come For You. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You listen to them and go, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I think what they mean is that the production is very uniform.
Yeah.
So obviously the drum sound, vocal sound, everything sounds similar.
If you don't listen to Nickelback, it is hard. You listen to a Nickelback album, you look at somebody in the face and say that it isn't well written, performed and produced. I dare you.
Oh, yeah.
They are some of the slickest hard rock albums I've ever heard. And they're still to be topped.
Dark Horse is very hard to top as an album. Just in general, I think that album, it just seems to tick all the boxes. Maybe that's the Mutt Lange. It's the Mutt Lange effect.
But what they do though on Dark Horse is like, it's theoretically perfect, but at no point do you question that it's a band.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of people in the more pop rock sphere struggle to do, because they can put out an album that's perfect, but sometimes you do listen and question, did anybody even play this? To a certain extent, like drums, bass, synths and stuff.
Yeah, it's very difficult depending on what's production devices they lean on. Like, it's very difficult when you have like an obvious like trap drum kit, whatever drum machine doesn't matter.
We found this when you use trigger pads. It's people still find it hard, I think, to connect. Well, some people. It depends if you performance mindset or if you're a drummer. You're going to listen to a trap section in a song and say, no way anybody played that. And yeah, they could have played it on a pad or triggered different sections of it on a pad, and they technically have played that. But I think in like your brain and your subconscious, there's this thought that it's not a real kit. It's not been played. Do you know what I mean?
Somebody can sequence an acoustic drum kit, you just never catch them. You never catch them because your brain would say, it sounds like a real drum kit to me.
I mean, there's and then
the thing.
The thing is as well, they can use loops, and loops you have to be really tapped in to spot a loop, I feel like.
Yeah.
Especially when music is so naturally tight now. To actually, you know, like on Call Me After Midnight by Bleachers.
Yeah.
Without watching the tape notes, I wouldn't have been able to confidently say that's a drum loop.
Yeah, because it's an acoustic drum loop, isn't it? That's your full dilemma. So how do you look at the drummer in the eye and say you sequence that drum loop, because you don't know?
How do you look
at
two drummers?
Yeah, two drummers with Bleachers
in their eyes and say, neither of y'all played them drums. But then we find out that they didn't. Well, we don't know who played them actually. We just know that it is a loop.
Yes.
There's a difference between a loop that's played and a loop that isn't played.
But to round off, I do really like Kings of Leon, and I like the fact that Kings of Leon is still doing their sort of sound without it feeling like... I don't mind it when they sort of go into a bit of modern production here and there. I know Kings of Leon haven't really touched modern production for the most part.
I think they got... As close as they could on Walls, and they said that's as far as we're going.
They tried to do stuff that you could maybe argue is slick, these sort of slick or glossy or whatever, but they're never really... I can't think of any Kings of Leon songs where they've used any obvious like Foreman shifting or drum pads or anything.
Vocal chops.
They've not really experimented with that sort of stuff. So I think it's really nice because I see idiots on Instagram every day saying every single song you listen to is auto-tuned and time stretched, no matter what label it's on. It's like you look at people like Kid Harpoon and you go, somebody tell me that he's auto-tuning Kings of Leon, because there is no way. Because that's not his bag. Because they're only thinking about the producers they like. They're not thinking about everybody.
The thing is, you can only use auto-tune if all the instruments are theoretically perfect pitch. And in a Kings of Leon scenario, the bends, I mean, we're listening to Hesitation Gen, the bends are not perfectly in pitch. The drums aren't going to be perfectly in time. It's got that looseness, that live feel to it. I see there's plugins that emulate that, by the way. Have you seen these?
What, that make your drums sound loose?
Yeah.
Oh,
and make your guitar sound like floppier.
What's the point?
I know. I think what's the point? Either play it or sequence it.
Anyway, on that angry man yells at cloud note for music production, we salute Kid Harpoon for doing what needs to be done.
Doing what nobody dares to do. Slapping the mouse out of people's hands.
Yeah, saying get off your computer and write some music properly. And thanks for listening, everybody.